Hey everybody, I'm Sierra.
And I'm Ben.
And welcome to another episode of The Unsolved Couple, where every week Ben and I recap one of the original gateway drugs into true crime.
Unsolved mysteries.
Okay, we are back for another week and another episode.
We're back at it.
We are excited. If we sound a little different than normally, Ben and I are actually on the road.
Yeah, we are. Just for this show. Okay, that's not true.
That's actually not true. But we're on vacation, and we decided to bring our equipment along with us so that we could still work while on vacation.
Yeah, and the only way we could do it is because I don't ever pack 50 pounds of gear.
Hey, for the record, this time I didn't pack
you were
50
actually
pounds.
You were underweight quite a bit.
Quite a bit, which was something that I've worked really hard to do.
I was impressed. It was pretty
I
good.
only packed like an hour and a half before we had to leave.
Yeah, I will say that was one of the best I've seen you do.
Yeah, and we've been on vacation now. And vacation, I should use that term loosely because we've been gone from our house now for almost 2 weeks.
We're visiting family.
Yeah, we're visiting family. We're house sitting for some family
much as that might be
that lives on a little farm. So we've been taking care of animals, and it's been adventurous. The first night we were here, we came home to a stray dog at the property that we were staying at, and we could not find the 19 chickens and ducks.
Yeah.
We spent an hour
in the dark,
in the pitch black,
looking for chickens
and ducks. We found the 2 ducks. They were in the creek in the back, but they were on the other side of the property because they were scared of the dog. So we had our kids out there. Ben was in a kayak.
Yeah, at night.
At night.
Trying to wrangle 2 ducks.
Who are friendly with people, but not like cuddly friendly with people. They don't let you hold them. They
don't let you touch them.
No, they're very much free range animals. They're very loved, but they are not like trained animals that when you call them, they come.
No, it was an adventure.
It was adventure. And the thing that we realized is that chickens bed down at night once the sun goes down, and they do not move.
So unless you literally walk up on them, you're not finding them.
Yeah.
But we got them all back. We found them all.
Happy to report all chickens and ducks are safe and sound.
Yeah. We've been doing it.
Mm-hmm.
We've been farming it.
Yeah, we've been on a micro farm for a week now, and it's been a great adventure for us and for our kids. And it's been fun because we've gotten to talk about some of the local legends of unsolved different mysteries and things.
Mysteries here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're in Southern Oregon right now, and there's a lot of kind of mysticism and folklore surrounding this area of Oregon. So it's been kind of fun to get to explore that.
Yeah.
And from a couple episodes ago, the dream that I had about the creepy barn.
We saw it.
I got to take Ben to it and show it to him.
Saw the barn.
We did.
Sure did.
And then oddly, my mom also told me that she had a scary dream about that same barn. So maybe I am psychic.
Oh, don't
Should I just start?
Oh my gosh. You all know how I feel about that.
Okay. Any other information or stories or anything you want to share with the people, Ben?
Nope.
Ready to dive into this one?
Oh man, am I ready?
So this episode,
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
Which one are we on? Was it 6?
Yeah, this is episode 6. Oh, sorry. Yes, you are correct. Season 1, episode 6.
All right. I just wanted to make sure. I couldn't remember if it was 6 or 7.
This one is going to be a little odd in the fact that the story 1 is Son of Sam, but it's a part 1 of 2. So episode 7, I looked today when I was doing some research. Episode 7 of season 1 has the second part of Son of Sam. I'm not going to go over both of them. I basically encompassed it. I did some research on the second one. So next week when we record, it might be a shorter episode because of that.
Yeah. This one was interesting. So, no, I was thinking about like...
Ben sometimes forgets that this is an audio production, not a visual production. You just can't be like, yeah.
Well, there's some banging going on outside because we locked the cat out.
We locked the cat out because it has a bell on its collar that we can't get off.
And when he's locked out, he likes to knock things over.
Yeah, there's probably a cup somewhere downstairs now that the water's all over the floor. So if there's any loud noises in the background, everything's fine. It's just a cat who does not want to be outside the door that we are in, but he also loves to like be in people's spaces. We already had to take the intro 3 times because he steps on the computer. There's a whole huge room he could play in. Yeah, and he wants nothing to do with it. Anyway, sorry, you were saying.
No, it was funny because this episode started. So we actually did watch this one together.
Mm-hmm.
But we did kind of. I had to go back and watch some of it on my
Ben
phone.
and I have a different research process each of us do.
And
but based on location of where we are, we did have to watch it together, but we did not communicate. We sat on opposite sides of the room and we did not talk during it.
No. And I thought it was funny because it comes on and Sierra goes, "Oh, this is Son of Sam." And I'll be honest, I've never heard of Son of Sam.
You've never heard of Son of Sam ever?
Never. Never once in my life.
What?
Yeah. I don't know anything. I mean, I know a little bit now because I've watched this episode.
Oh, and it just scratches the surface of the Son of Sam.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Okay. And let's.
This is an infamous serial killer.
See, that's what makes me laugh here because Sierra's like, "Oh, I know this. Like I've listened to so many podcasts. She's watched documentaries on this. I've never even heard of this person. I never even heard of this case." And this was funny. So we're driving to the beach one day and Sierra's phone was hooked up to the car. And she's like, "Turn on literally the only podcast that Sierra and I can agree on to listen to is the Nateland podcast."
Mm-hmm. Hosted by Nate Bargatze.
It's got
Dusty Slay, Aaron
Weber, and
Brian Bates. Yeah.
Right? It's just 4 comedians that sit around and BS. And
about nothing. It's the Seinfeld of podcasts.
Yeah. They pick one topic, and literally the topic we listened that
trash.
we're talking about was garbage.
Yeah.
Trash. And for 2 hours, mostly they don't talk about trash. They just literally tell jokes. Anyways, I'm getting long-winded here. That's the only podcast that Sierra and I can listen together. She's like, "Hey, turn on Nate Bargatze." And I'm scrolling through her subscribed podcasts. And how many do you subscribe to?
I have no idea.
It's so many.
There's a lot.
It is so many.
Okay, so here's
the thing.
How many do you have?
I think like 6.
Okay.
Okay, I have one political podcast I listen to because I like to keep up, but I don't like too much politics in my life. And then I have like Baseball Today. I have like 3 baseball podcasts because I like sports and I love baseball. And then like a history podcast.
Yeah.
Like 2 history podcasts. And that's it.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'm a big fan. I like Mike Rowe, his The Way I Heard It.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
That's it. That's literally my podcast. So I can honestly say I've never once in my life listened to a true crime podcast. And so I don't know anything about this.
Yeah. So that's it. So I have adult ADHD. And I guess in my life, I just assumed that it was normal that I have to be in a mood to listen to different things. And so I have currently right now, I have 2 books on my Libby that I'm listening to. I have 1 book that I'm reading in person. And then I think I have 2 to 4 books on my Audibles app that I'm listening to. I also subscribe to tons of podcasts.
Yeah, I don't know how you...
I have to be...
I don't get
it has to fit either the task that I'm doing or the mood that I'm doing, and it's very specific. And anyone out there with ADHD probably is like feeling really seen. I just assumed because that's how I live my life that is normal.
But here's... Okay, I have a question for you, though. do you have to like listen to every episode?
Some of them yes, and some of them no.
See, I am the person like I have to listen. This is my OCD coming
Yeah.
out. I have OCD, and I have to like.
No,
I'm
because
now-
there's a handful of podcasts that I've started an episode, and I'm like, yeah, it just didn't hook me, and I'll
Well,
just skip
that's
to the
di-
next
but
one.
That's no, I can't. I gotta listen.
I love
to-
the
I have
Marcus
to
Blade
listen-
button because then I can just clear it off my thing and then go to the next one. Or sometimes I'll scroll
I've
through and I'm
never
like, oh,
done
that
that.
sounds good. That topic sounds more
I have never
interesting.
marked a podcast as already played. That's no, absolutely not. I've never done that.
I'm sure by now people are probably doing that to ours because we've been in here for 11
All right,
minutes
sorry.
just BSing.
All right.
But no, yeah, and some of the podcasts, I will say, depending on the format, I have to start at the very beginning, not the beginning of that season, because there's a few that I've listened to that are several years old. And I will start back from the several-year-old episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you get into it, like I
Mm-hmm.
can pick up where they are now.
Yeah.
And maybe like some of my baseball one, because I haven't kept up on vacation, I'll just dive back in because it's with that, like you only listen to what's going on right there. Like I don't need to listen to what happened in baseball 2 weeks ago because that doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I need to know what's going on, like what happened over the weekend series and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But
So, I
right,
don't know. It's
sorry.
but yeah, that's
I thought
just,
it was just funny because I was like, and,
it was a
and
weird
all-
thing that you just learned about me. Like,
And all of your literally 90% of them are true crime. And I just thought it was funny. You listen to so much true crime podcasts
mm-hmm.
that I don't know if there's a story out there that you haven't heard. And here's
Unfortunately, they're weirdos who keep being weirdos and keep doing terrible things and people breaking them down. And there are, this is very nuanced, there are several different like subcategories of true crime. Learning about court cases and that whole process and the law and how some of these, anyways, it's all very, and actually I'll be mentioning a podcast later in the episode on the final one where we've got to talk about, and it is an episode, it is a podcast that I follow, but I followed for a different case and I'm not up to date on it. So actually starting today when we were down at the creek earlier, I was listening to it because I am now intrigued how something from 2018 gets back to what we are talking about today, but I'll get into it. So
I
yeah,
just thought it was funny. They're like, oh, I know this case. And I'm like, dude, I've never heard of this case ever. Like, I have nothing.
Son of Sam is one of the
most.
most infamous serial killers. I hate using the word infamous for someone, like for something terrible, but notorious maybe is a better word.
I mean, I've heard of like Ted Bundy. You know?
Yeah, and he's right up in there because this was kind of all during the same time, and Unsolved Mysteries, in all honesty, didn't go too deep into kind of a lot of the things I've studied and read and listened to about the Son of Sam. But we'll kind of get
All
into.
right, sorry.
We'll break it down
let's
for
jump
our
into-
listeners.
Let's jump into
how
the unsolved
the
mystery
Unsolved
version.
Mysteries covers it. Okay.
Well, because I think they're taking a different.
They're
take
taking
on
a
it.
very different, and actually, in all honesty, I had not heard this theory looked at this way.
Okay.
So, summer of 1977 in New York City, a year-long killing spree came to an end when a man named David Berkowitz was arrested for the, quote, Son of Sam killings. 6 people had been killed and 7 people had been injured. The people of New York and the media and everyone was raving about this arrest having taken place. Everyone was sleeping safer at night and feeling relieved about that the Son of Sam was off the streets. But did he act alone? Dun,
So that-
dun, dun.
That's the mystery.
That
they
is the
bring-
mystery
They bring to the table.
they bring to the table. So the Unsolved Mysteries episode starts kind of with that sort of a very quick recap of David Berkowitz's arrest. Very quickly.
Yeah, they dive right into
And then
that.
it introduces a character to the story. And he's an author, and his name is Maury Terry. And he's the author of the book, The Ultimate Evil. I have not read this book.
Okay.
And actually, I have never heard of this book. If we were doing a deep dive into something like this, I would be, and I've added this to my Libby thing, I would like to read this book. I'm interested in to see
If we're doing a 3-part episode on
if we were
Son of
doing
Sam.
something of Son of Sam, I would be intrigued to read his book.
Okay.
He felt that there was more to the story. He believed that Berkowitz did not act alone, and that Berkowitz was part of a gang of men that were going around the city committing these killings. The whole episode is based on this one man's belief and his journalism investigation that he did to write this book.
Okay.
I will say and because I didn't get to do a ton of research on this and I haven't read this book, I don't have any of his sources. I don't know where a lot of his information was gathered from. We do know that he did interview a lot of eyewitnesses and several of the survivors. However, I don't have any way to kind of verify or look through in depth because there was no trial on this. So there's not even like court transcripts and records and stuff like that. So I don't know where he...
There was no trial for Son of Sam?
Mm-mm.
Why? Did he plead guilty?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry to jump ahead, but spoiler alert, if you don't know like Abended who Son of Sam is...
If you're like me and don't know Son of Sam, we just ruined it for you. Also the Titanic sank,
Yeah.
Like... Get with the program.
So the whole point of this Unsolved Mysteries episode is to see if the people... They put a plea out to the people if they can help add more to the story because there are things that they're looking for in trying to uncover whether...
Yeah, but this is like 10 years later.
It was, but I still think that was still fairly new. And because there was so many people that actually survived this attack, I think there's a lot of people out there that want to make sure that everyone is accounted for. And I did do a little bit of side research, and I'll kind of interject when we get to it throughout the episode. So at this point in Unsolved Mysteries, it then takes us back to a more in-depth kind of timeline of Son of Sam.
It gives you all the snapshots of everything that happened.
So July 29th, 1976, 2 young women were shot in an area of the Bronx using a .44 caliber bullet. They didn't say what kind of gun, it just said a .44 caliber bullet. I don't know anything about guns. Is that a pretty common size caliber?
Back then it was mostly revolvers, which a .44, like a .38 and a .44 were pretty common.
Okay,
then.
So that's not anything spectacular or I guess something you can single one person out for. One of them was killed instantly and the other did a composite sketch of the gunman and was created and sent out to the media. Okay? And that's what the Unsolved Mystery episode really hyper focuses on for a big chunk of the thing.
Yeah, they are really focused on eyewitnesses and these sketches.
Which, yeah, I mean, is problematic in itself.
Because we all like, oh, well, we know eyewitness and this, like that. But this is the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, eyewitness was still a big deal.
Absolutely.
It held a much higher, I don't know.
It had more weight to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for.
So, and then on October 23rd, 1976, another shooting occurred in the Queens area. Both victims survived. They were shot again by a .44 caliber bullet. November 27th, 1976, 2 young women were also shot in Queens. Both survived. One became paralyzed for the rest of her life. Eyewitnesses helped create another composite of the gunman. On January 30th, 1977, Christine and her fiancé were shot in the car. She was killed. On March 8th, 1977, Columbia University student was shot and killed while walking home from school around 7:30 p.m. Eyewitnesses created 2 more composite sketches of the killer. These seemed different from the earlier ones. So sorry, that was a really quick...
Yeah, so...
If anyone wants to dive in deeply to the Son of Sam...
I didn't have the timeline written down. So when did the first one start?
The first one was July 29th, 1976.
And then We're up to April 1977.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going on now for like 9 months.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So over 9 months, several people at this point have been shot. A couple people have been killed. One person paralyzed. We have at this point 4 composites, sketches.
Yeah, 4 different people have now given.
And on the episode of Unsolved Mysteries, they show all 4 of them, and they are wildly different.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, it all seems to be a white male of some sort, and it seemed, but the hair texture, the style, the length. What did you say?
It's always the white males.
Oh, good night, Turner. So it just gets like, there didn't seem to be one feature that was like, oh, that like eyebrows or something that all was the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it seems like the author of the book, this was one big thing that he really at least seemed to start to set off his inquisitive mind of that maybe this was not one person. The biggest thing they have in common, obviously, is that this is New York. It's 44 caliber shotguns.
Not shotgun.
Not shotgun. Sorry.
Gun. Just gun.
Just
not shotgun.
just a bullet. A 44 caliber bullets have been found. So we still have a pretty big net that we're throwing over these. And it seemed to be people, either lover lanes type of things or people out in the evening time.
But it seemed like most of them were sitting in cars.
Most of them were, yeah. The only person, there was a university student shot on her, walking on her way home. So again, then that is even like kind of outside.
But it's just random shootings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like there's no ties to these people.
No.
And there's no like.
Sometimes it's 2 women. Sometimes it's a male and a female.
Yeah.
There was nothing stolen from the vehicles.
It doesn't seem to be like.
It doesn't seem to be sexually motivated either. Race motivated.
It just seems to be random.
Mm-hmm. So then again, on April 17th, 1977, 2 people were shot and killed, but this was the first time that a handwritten letter had been left at the scene.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and they show the letter. It's, if anyone wants to look up, it's really easy to find. There's quite a bit of jargon in it, but the killer is the one who gave himself the son of Sam.
That should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, he gives himself his own nickname.
Your own nickname?
We've all known that person that like gives themselves a nickname.
Or talks about themselves in third person.
Exactly. The only person that's allowed to do that is Terry from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's the only person that is allowed to do it, and it seems endearing. Anyone else, you're a chump. We don't want to hear it from you. On Memorial Day 1977, the killer sent another letter to a newspaper columnist, and it contained taunts and once again references to Satanism, or back to the satanic panic that you
but this was in
still
the 70s.
didn't really. I know, but this was leading up to it. This was one of the cases that kicked this off. You don't know about any of that stuff. You were just, even like the satanic panic thing is still kind of a concept that you have heard touched on, but never have done a big deep dive into it.
I sure
There's a
haven't.
couple podcasts about it that are actually really great.
I'm sure there is a podcast about it.
There are.
Just like there's a podcast about the worst show ever made on television called Unsolved Mysteries.
Hey, that's us.
I know. Well, I'm not saying it's a bad. I didn't say it was a bad podcast. I just say there's even a podcast about that. There's a podcast
there's
about
podcasts for
everything.
So in this letter, he mentions the 22 disciples of hell, and that comes back later.
The what?
The 22 disciples of hell.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. My side research says that it claimed to be a cult. That was a satanic cult. Good night. I've got some more information on it at the end. We'll kind of touch on. I know.
So dumb.
Yeah. And the Wicked King Wicker.
I don't know
what that means either.
All
but
I know is what was that terrible, just awful movie with Nicolas Cage?
Oh, that was
Wicker?
in one of his times where he was taking on the Wicker
that was
Man.
when I think he was in like
tax
tax
problems. So
He
he was
taking every
taking
role
any
given
role
to
he
him.
could, and they were
I think
terrible. The Wicker Man.
the Wicker
No,
Man.
the Burning Man.
No, I think
No,
it
was
was
it
the Wicker Man.
Terrible
It was
movie.
so awful.
We went and saw that in the movie theater with my mom.
It was your parents. Both your parents were there.
Yeah.
And I walked out and I was like, "What did I just watch?"
It was terrible.
so awful.
Yeah.
Never watch it again. If you're looking for a great movie to watch tonight, go watch The Wicker Man.
And he also mentioned John Wheaties, the rapist and suffocator of young girls. This guy had some twisted thoughts.
Okay, so we're into
Yeah, we're into some crazy, deep, dark stuff at this point. He signed it again, the son of Sam, and wrote a satanic symbol at the bottom.
What's the satanic
I'm going to
symbol?
guess it's that star or some sort of something, upside down cross. I don't know. Pick your 80s movie and insert some sort of Wiccan or witch sign below. Okay, so finally, we're to the night of July 31st, 1977. So we're about a year.
A full year into this.
We're a year in. And Unsolved Mysteries gives us diagrams and all kinds of stuff on this fateful night.
Yeah. I said they did a pretty decent
They did
job.
a pretty decent job on trying to explain,
breaking down
this specific timeline.
Yeah.
So that night, the son of Sam killed a young woman and shot her boyfriend, Robert, who was injured. And he's interviewed.
They were in a car, right? On the street.
On the street. He was interviewed in this episode of Unsolved Mysteries.
Okay.
There was also an eyewitness. He was a 19-year-old mechanic. And Tommy, his name was Tommy, he gave a description of the shooter, which was much different than, of course, the 4 other composite sketches. Okay. Authorities had learned that a parking ticket had been issued near the scene. It was issued to a Ford Galaxy belonging to a postal employee, David Berkowitz. Why is it always the postal employees?
They went postal.
They would. We could even do an episode on that term because that also came from a terrible incident that took place, but it's not unsolved.
I've never heard of it.
When authorities went to his house, I did love the reenactments of this. This was so classic reenactment.
Okay, but I guess
the way Unsolved Mysteries sounded, that this was just like 4 cops that just like hung out outside.
Yeah, but that's like...
And when I did some research, there's a huge task force assigned to this because this had been going on for a year now.
Yeah, I'm going to imagine.
There was a huge task force.
The FBI is involved.
So the reenactment was like 4 off-duty police officers just scoping the property out and like secretly digging through his car. So
they tie this guy
from a parking ticket.
Solely from a parking ticket, like a couple blocks away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Once again, because there was no trial, I don't know if it was common practice. Like, hey, we had something happen. Let's look and see if anybody got a parking ticket within like a couple blocks of that.
It's New York City.
Everyone is, and from the interviews that they did, it seemed like double parking. One lady got mad that some guy got mad at her for double parking.
She was just in the middle of the street parked there.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't know but that is how they found this guy's name.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
At least according to the 1980s New York police officers, who we know at the time were on the super up and up.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we could go into...
No, I mean, I read a book, what was it? Murder in the City, I think, and it's about like a bunch of murders in the city of Chicago in the 1920s. And like, it's pretty crazy.
I can only imagine
that were taken. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
According to the police officers, though, they found Berkowitz by a parking ticket. Okay, so that's what they said.
I mean, talk about luck.
Yeah. So they went to his residence. They noticed his same car was parked outside. They peeked inside the car and saw a duffel bag with a rifle in it, which then I'm guessing gave them quote unquote probable cause.
Probable? Probable?
Probable cause. They searched the car and they actually found another letter written by the son of Sam. I mean, this is some pretty hardcore evidence. No thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's open.
I
and
don't know
shut
what else you
right
could
there.
ask for. We have a gun and an unpublished letter written.
Well, they had the, yeah, they had.
And the handwriting in the letters was extremely distinct.
Yeah, and I'm going to imagine that there's not just random dudes with letters in their car that say son of Sam.
Yeah.
Unless you're the
Well,
killer.
and this one threatened more attacks and more violence and different things like that on the city.
Okay.
So the cops decide to not go to inside and arrest Berkowitz at the moment. They want to wait for him to come out into the public.
Okay.
Okay. So around 10 o'clock that night, he returned to his car, also carrying a .44 caliber revolver in a paper bag.
In a paper bag.
Yeah.
I do remember this.
He was arrested
Right on the scene.
right on the scene.
It said like he didn't really put up
Nope.
a fight.
I think he actually made the comment, "What took you so long?"
Yeah.
That's like the famous like line.
Yeah.
Yeah. He confessed to everything. He told the police that he had received the orders to kill from the barking dog of a neighbor. And the dog's name was Sam.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that
And the
makes sense.
dog, it was telling him that it needed blood.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that tracks.
That
Along with
tracks.
everything else in the letters and stuff.
I mean, sure. I take my orders from a barking dog.
Yeah, so Berkowitz pled guilty to all the murders. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Okay? So that is your very quick recap of kind of
Yeah,
how we
that's-
get
well,
to
that's
this.
how Unsolved Mysteries recaps it there.
So now we come back to the author of this book. He tells us that he first became suspicious when he read the reports about the last shooting on the 31st. He actually went and talked to the eyewitnesses, including the 19-year-old mechanic named Tommy.
Yeah.
He said that he had seen a slim man with medium-length hair shoot Stacy and Robert.
Yeah.
When he very first saw Berkowitz on the news a few days later, he was certain that he had seen a different man. He did not believe that this was
Well,
the
they
same
interviewed
guy.
him, and he said that wasn't him.
Yeah.
He's saying it's not Berkowitz.
He's saying it's not Berkowitz. He's saying that Berkowitz was much stockier than the shooter had been. And he said it was so funny the way he was saying it because it seemed like he didn't want to
You
like...
want to call him fat?
He didn't want to call him fat, but I'm like, oh, so dude, he's a serial killer. Say whatever you want to about him. But I just thought it was very funny that he like was trying to like tiptoe around it and just was like, well, you know what I'm saying. He was
Big.
stockier. Yeah.
He was
And that he
fat.
didn't think he could lose that amount of weight in a few days or gain that amount of weight in a few days. The author, Murray, also learned about a yellow Volkswagen, which was parked in front of the park. Stacy and Robert were shot outside of a park. And this is where that diagram that they show on Unsolved Mysteries was really helpful because there was like a park with a basketball court. And anyone that's ever been to New York, these parks sometimes cross between two main roads. So like, let's say between 1st and 2nd Street or something. And that whole like one block will be a park. But around it, they're not very big.
What was all apartments there?
There's apartments everywhere, right? And there are these micro mini parks all over the city. You'll have several apartment buildings and then these parks with sporting stuff and basketball courts and different things. So they were parked outside this park. The Volkswagen had been left there around 1 a.m. on the night of the shooting. 3 men got out from this yellow Volkswagen, and 30 minutes later, Tommy noticed it passed by him twice. At 2:05 a.m., a policeman issued a parking ticket to Berkowitz's car. At the same time, a neighborhood resident was dropped off by a friend next to it. They were blocking the street. So that's that. There was a lady and her gentleman friend at 2 a.m. saying goodnight to each other in the car.
Kissy, kissy.
They didn't say that in the episode.
We all know what happened.
But they were parked in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And Berkowitz had gotten into his vehicle and was trying to get onto the street and had pulled out and then was stuck because this lover's lane that was taking place impromptuli in the middle of the street in New York City. And he honked at his horn.
And she looked at him.
She was not happy about.
No, she
still to this day when she gave this interview was not okay.
She was more upset about the honking.
She was
than anything
else. Not the fact that she possibly just escaped a serial killer.
Nah.
But that this man had the audacity to honk at her for her being parked in the middle of the street.
Yeah. Crazy how you get.
But if you're in New York, I swear the horn.
It's part of it.
It's just part of it. Everyone's honking their horn. I think they just do it sometimes to have ambiance.
I think they want to honk the horn.
So it seems like this night where the shooting took place around this park, there is a lot of activity happening.
There's a lot.
This is for sure the city that never sleeps. We've got a yellow Volkswagen with 3 people in it. We've got Tommy, the eyewitness, who's a mechanic. I don't even know what he was doing out at this time. We've got a lady in the car with a couple. We've got Berkowitz car getting a ticket, but he's also trying to leave the scene around the same time. So this lady gets out of her car, makes eye contact, and gives Berkowitz a dirty look.
Of course.
She tells us that. She says that she stared him down.
How
dare you honk at me?
Gave him.
She sees him leaving the area and then actually sees a police car leaving the area too, right around the same time. 15 minutes later, she's out. Now it's 2:30-ish in the morning with her dog. She's bringing her dog out to use the bathroom. And she notices a man walking.
Well, she says it was him.
It was him, yeah.
And of course she notices him.
Yeah, she was out walking her dog. Look. Yeah, she sees Berkowitz again. And this time he walks right past her. She walks into the apartment. About a minute later, she says, as she's entering her apartment and getting settled, she hears shots fired.
Shots fired.
Mm-hmm. In her mind, it seemed unlikely that Berkowitz would be able to walk the 2 blocks in the scene of the shooting in about a minute.
Yeah, so that was their big thing. Their big thing is this one lady.
Mm-hmm.
The 19-year-old guy saying it ain't him.
Mm-hmm.
And then the they were real focused on this Volkswagen with 3 dudes that circled the block.
Yeah. And I think there was a witness that said that they got out at one point and walked into the park.
Okay.
So
they lead
in this 2-block area, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. They lead you to believe.
Mm-hmm.
How they put it is that these 3 men, and supposedly 2, I think that one of them supposedly looks like the sketch.
Yeah.
He's tall and thinner, not as fat, according to the eyewitness, right?
Yeah. It seems...
So that's pretty much their pitch.
That is their pitch. Yep.
All right.
So yeah, from their scientific research that they did, a brisk walk to get from where Berkowitz was last seen to the area of the shooting should take roughly 2 minutes. But according to the witness who saw him while she was out, she claims that from the time she saw him to the time she heard shots fired was a minute. Yeah. I don't know how you know that at 2:30 in the morning.
Okay. But at the same time, she's saying she was outside with her dog, and now she's inside hearing gunshots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what took her 30 seconds?
Yeah. That's to me I will say this seemed such like a tight timeline to be making these kind of things. I'm not saying that anyone is wrong, but if you add in human error to this, I think they kind of cancel each other out.
Yeah, okay. Well, and here's my other thing, okay? People's concept of time is so jacked up.
It's very. And who knows, this lady just came home at 2:30 in the morning. She'd had a drink or two, I don't know. She was out on a date.
Making out with her boyfriend.
Yeah. Could she have been in a state of mind or maybe even exhausted because she just wants her dog to like go to the bathroom so she can go to bed? I don't know.
A lot is riding
on this lady's testimony. But
that one, she saw him earlier, and then two, she saw him again, and then three, she heard the gunshots.
Yeah.
Like, she's clearly, they're making her out to be an integral part of this thing. And her concept of 1 minute is correct.
So 15 seconds, again, I don't know how we're getting these numbers, but 15 seconds after the shooting, witnesses saw a man who was wearing a very obvious cheap wig, which the reenactment actor 10 out of 10 for the cheap wig scene that they had, running away from the scene and got into a yellow Volkswagen. Okay. Murray believes that there was at least 3 people involved in the shooting, including Berkowitz himself. He believes that they are part of an organized conspiracy that was responsible for all of the Son of Sam shootings. He believes that Berkowitz was involved in several of the shootings, but that he also became the fall guy in the case.
Because he got that parking ticket.
He broke
the golden rule.
It is alleged that the cult was actively recruiting new members as late as 10 years after Berkowitz's arrest. Now we're getting into some of the side research that I did, okay?
Satanic panic.
Murray believes that this cult sent letters to Jimmy. In the letters, the King Wicker is mentioned, including Berkowitz lived in an apartment. Wicker Man. Well, here's Berkowitz lived in an apartment next to Wicker Street.
Okay.
A man named John Carr lived close to him. Murray learned that his nickname was John Wheaties.
Wheaties? Like the breakfast?
Like the breakfast cereal.
Love Wheaties.
No one likes Wheaties. Nobody does.
Unless you're a champion, you like Wheaties.
I don't believe
it's the breakfast of champions.
I do not believe that any of those champions have ever actually eaten a bowl of Wheaties in their life.
In the 90s, all of the Olympians were on Wheaties, okay? And
is that still a thing now?
If you ate Wheaties, you would know.
Yeah, the Olympics are going on right now as we speak.
And I'm just saying, listen, it's a breakfast of champions. I've been told that.
Blech. It's so
by
gross.
Television, and
it has no flavor. It looks like someone shaved a cardboard box down and put milk on it and said, "Eat this."
We, as a family,
did you collect Wheaties boxes?
Some of them, yeah. No joke. In the upstairs storage room we had. Okay, but let's be very clear.
Before you even said a thing, I knew exactly where that was going.
Okay. Hold on. We're getting into a side game. Who do you think we collected them of? Know our house.
I know your house. Okay, so I'm gonna guess the '90s Olympians, and then the Blazers.
Yes. Clyde the Glide was on.
Clyde the Glide, yes.
And I do still love Clyde the Glide. Anyone that speaks ill
Did
of
you
him,
guys also collect the Dairy Queen cups?
Yes. Those were awesome. They were the best.
I wonder if that was just an Oregon thing.
Of course, it had to be.
Yeah. So in like the 90s.
Early 90s, the Blazers were good.
Mm-hmm, they were so fun to watch.
Yeah. But then you had the Bulls with Michael Jordan, who always beat us.
Which was, well, and you know what? To even get to watch the Bulls was a crazy experience. Yeah. Michael Jordan.
So I still remember
you could go to Dairy
finals.
Queen and they had these collector cups.
Glass collector cups with Blazers
with the Blazers on them.
And I know all of them. Kevin Duckworth, Buck Williams, Terry Porter, Jerome Kersey, and Clyde the Glide Drexler.
See, I knew none of those.
That was their starting lineup. I knew none
of those things. Yeah.
I loved them. They were the best.
I think we had a few of them, but I could totally see your family like it being
the Blazers were a big
commitment.
Deal in our house.
Well, and you grew up in the Portland area, so you had more access. I grew up in Southern Oregon, and I made it to one Blazer game as a child, and I still remember I was in 7th grade. It was 1997, so in the time that they were...
No, they were terrible by then. They were terrible by then.
Okay.
Clyde was gone. All of them were gone.
They were gone by then. So
And
maybe
that
that's
was, like,
why we could
getting into
finally...
the
But it was like a 4-hour drive to get to go see, but it was my first ever like live sporting event, and I thought it was amazing.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure
Yeah.
it was awesome. But, anyways, sorry.
Did
Back
you ever get to go see that starting lineup play in person?
No. No, I mean, I grew up, I'm the youngest of 7 kids. Like, my parents could not take us to a basketball game.
Yeah.
I went to one game as a teenager, and that was it. And that was back in the late 90s when they were terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I got to go is because they were becoming the Jailblazers. Nobody went to the games because Portland was getting real upset with the team, and literally the tickets were like $5.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were just trying to get people in the seats.
Okay. Well, that was a fun tangent.
Sorry, I
No, you're totally fine. But yeah.
You brought up
so,
Wheaties.
Sorry, back to that. So Murray learned. So there was a name, John Carr, lived close to him. Murray learned that his nickname was John Wheaties, which was also mentioned in the Jimmy letter. He happened to be the son of Sam Carr. Okay. Sam's dog is the one that Berkowitz claimed, told him to commit the killing. So there's all these like weird connections. I don't think that they're necessarily grasping at straws, and some of these connections would be like, look, this word in this letter, he lives near one of those streets. Like sometimes I think when you're looking for things, they can be found.
Oh, 100%.
And you're also dealing with a psychopath writing letters. This is not a sane person writing these letters.
Okay, but the guy's saying a dog told him.
Yeah.
Clearly we have some mental health issues.
Yeah.
I mean,
need to be addressed.
So, if trying to dive deeper into what this guy is saying and doing, when he, he admits to the crimes, which a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And then he's telling you the reason he did it is because of a dog.
Yeah.
So, can you really trust anything that's coming out of this guy's mouth?
I just always, and this is maybe insensitive of me, but there is something about a dog barking in the middle of the night that might drive me crazy enough to start.
Yeah,
funny to I would lose it.
Though.
Not doing that, but I'm just I just thought it was funny. There was a barking dog. I'm like, that makes my skin.
Yeah, we
crawl.
all know that.
Trying to sleep in the middle of the night and just a barking dog.
Just wanting your neighbor to take care of that.
Yeah.
And I can imagine in New York.
He's like, the dog is telling you to do something.
I mean, I'm going to imagine by night 3 of that, he
hasn't slept. He's like, the dog is talking to me.
You're probably hearing things,
Yeah.
But, if what you're hearing is to tell you to go shoot random people, I think a most sane person would
that's a time to say, hey, we should evaluate these thoughts I'm having.
Maybe I should go get a hotel room for a night.
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea.
Maybe I should just get some sleep.
Yeah, maybe I just need a good night of sleep. I remember, so we had twins and Ben was gone, which is hard to explain in a short time, but purposefully for a good reason was not. And I was raising these 2 newborns by myself, and I had to go into a doctor's appointment for follow-ups and C-sections and all of this stuff. And I sat down with a doctor and clearly was suffering from postpartum. I mean, obviously. I wasn't, and here's this man, and he says to me,
this man,
he says to me, well, maybe you should just try to get some more sleep.
I haven't thought about that.
Oh, thank you, doctor. I think with the audacity for that to come out of this man's mouth was jarring. And I just was like, we're done here. And I was so, anyways, yeah, maybe Berkowitz just needed a little bit more sleep. Okay, so Murray tracks down Murray believes that John resembles 2 of the composite killer sketches. So he tracks him down to an Air Force base in North Dakota. Murray learned that while he worked in North Dakota, good night, He frequently traveled to New York around the time of the murders. Authorities confirmed that he was also a close friend and confidant of Berkowitz. So we're drawing these conclusions with this group of boys who apparently were all part of a cult. On February 17th, 1976, 6 months after Berkowitz's arrest, John was found dead in his girlfriend's apartment in North Dakota. It was believed at first that he had sat at the edge of his bed and shot himself with a gun that was found next to him. His girlfriend originally believed that he had committed suicide. However, the next day she changed her story and said she believed that he had been murdered. She confessed that he was wanted for the Son of Sam murders in New York and that he was afraid for his life. One of the North Dakota investigators is convinced that he was murdered. However, to this day, his death remains a mystery.
Dun, dun, dun.
So just kind of some
Mystery.
Side research that I
You're
did.
adding another mystery into a mystery.
Yeah. Murray believes that John had satanic cult ties to both New York and North Dakota. The cult allegedly practiced blood drinking, urine drinking, and animal sacrifice.
Really? Urine drinking?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Where do you get that?
I don't know, Ben. I think that
Where does that come in? Who thought that
there's
idea?
just a big jump in my mind from like plain Bloody Mary to like blood and urine drinking and animal sacrifice. I don't know who hears that and thinks, you know what?
I'm in.
That sounds like a great
Count me
time.
in, dude. You know what?
You had me at the urine.
I was like, hey, listen, I'm looking for a group
Mm-hmm.
to fit in.
Like-minded individuals.
Yeah, I need to fit in. What do you guys do? Oh, you drink blood urine? Count me in.
Count me in.
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Why not?
I'll give it a go. Who does?
I don't know.
All right.
Okay.
I mean, hey, to each his
So
own, but
there is some kind of
count me out.
weird. There are some weird things that happen here in the investigation. Their choice of animal was allegedly a German Shepherd. R.I.P. German Shepherds. Okay.
Well, that's terrible.
I know. Murray discovered that the satanic symbol at the end of Jimmy's letter was also found in John's phone book. Phil Falcon was an acquaintance of John in North Dakota, and he told Murray that he accidentally walked in one time on John and another man during a satanic ritual. They were apparently sacrificing an animal in the middle of Phil's own house.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is all stuff from the author.
Who
And
believes-
again, there.
So the author is saying this was a group.
That is
did it.
his belief, and he went out and did this research and interviewed these
and he just
people.
was finding dudes that are parts of cults doing weird
They did weird stuff.
stuff.
So
We
this
got
friend
urine.
told Murray that John belonged to a violent satanic cult. A prison source who knew Berkowitz claimed that he had been introduced to this cult by John's brother in 1975 and allegedly attended a floating covenant party wherein he became involved with the cult. At 4 a.m. on October 4th, 1979, Michael was killed after he crashed into a light post on the side of the highway in New York City.
Wait, who's Michael?
One of these cult members.
So they're all just ending up.
They're
dead.
all just piecing out real quick. Karma has a really funny way of doing that. So maybe they must not have been very good at their rituals.
Clearly, or they really were good at them. And
Maybe there was-
and God took care of it.
Yeah. Okay, so further proof that these people all knew each other, that Berkowitz and John and Michael all knew each other. They were mentioned on their friendship was mentioned in a couple of depositions. So I will say that's something.
Okay.
October 25th,
Berkowitz mentions him in his depositions.
Yep, October 25th, 1978. He said that he did know John and that in 1983, during another deposition, Berkowitz confirmed that they were involved in a satanic cult and that they were murdered to ensure their silence. Murray believed that the deaths of the were engineered by the, quote, 22 disciples of hell.
Oh, my hell. We're back to the 22
He also
disciples.
believed that the group held rituals in a park just located 1 mile from Berkowitz's apartment. It gets better. In August of 1977, the day after Berkowitz's arrest, 2 young boys led police to a shallow grave where the body of 3 German shepherds were found. 2 had been strangled and the other had been shot in the head. At least 10 other dogs were found dead later in the park.
Wow.
Okay.
So
we got a dog serial killer on the loose.
Well, we know it's a cult.
It's the... no, I don't think it was the cult.
Why would it not be the cult?
I think that people get rid of their dogs in New York City and don't know what to do with them.
No.
You don't think so?
Not that many dogs.
You think there's actually a satanic cult in New York City, the 22 disciples of hell that are sacrificing dogs in the middle of a park in New York City?
Here's the thing. There's some weird people out in the world, but I'm telling you, here's the thing. I honestly don't know. I just think there's some weirdos out there. But 3 dogs all in one spot, that's not just people.
The 3 in one
dogs.
spot is kind of a weird thing.
And then, was this 10 dogs throughout the city? Or is this 10 dogs
in the same park?
Okay, then no. That's not people just ditching their dogs. That's some weirdos doing something. That's too much. Too
many coinkydinks?
Yeah. Eventually, those too much coincidences lead to one thing.
Do you know what that theory in the world of...
I bet you learned it on some true crime podcast.
In the theory in the world of the court cases is called?
Tell me, I can't wait.
Occam's razor.
Yeah, okay.
That the most obvious answer is likely the correct one.
I've heard of this.
No, see, look at you.
Well, okay, yes.
You work in law enforcement, so you've heard the theory of Occam's razor before?
Yes.
Okay, authorities also received further information that a group of people in black robes with hoods
now this is getting better.
Were chanting and carrying on rituals.
22 of them?
Probably. That they were chanting and carrying on rituals at the rear end of this park. More remains of dogs were found in that area, and it was believed that they were sacrificed in rituals. Murray is the author.
Yes, I know.
Okay. Received a call from a teenager in Yonkers who claimed that he had seen the satanic cult meeting in the park. He took Murray to the park and showed him where the cult had met.
Okay.
Satanic graffiti was found, and he also showed them remains of more dogs. Finally, he took them along the aqueduct where a satanic altar had been set up.
Okay. All right. How do you keep up with it? Like, this is just getting out of control.
This is all of the extra research that I did. This is outside
what I'm saying
of the...
I mean, eventually, if you want to find more stuff, you're going to. Like,
yeah. But this is more... Okay, the whole reason I went down this rabbit hole a little bit was because this author convinced Unsolved Mysteries to help him get a 2-part episode together to try to find more witnesses and evidence to prove his theory. I wanted to do a little bit of research on what he believed he had uncovered. And like I said at the beginning, my disclosure is that since there was no court records, all we have is this, he's an author, he's not a journalist. All we have is the book that he wrote with what he says he found and interviewed people.
Okay, but here's my question.
Mm-hmm.
This guy confessed.
He did.
If this was a group.
So, hold on. I'm going to get to that.
All right.
Okay? So cold activity has actually continued around the park since the Son of Sam killings. In fact, while Unsolved Mysteries was filming the story, 2 residents came forward to say that they had witnessed satanic cult meetings taking place in the park.
Yeah, okay.
They stated that they had gone outside after seeing car headlights, and went to an area of the aqueduct in the park, and they saw at least 15 people standing in the area chanting, holding candles, and out of fear they fled.
Did the car?
I wish I would have known about this before we went to New York City the last time, because
You would have went to the
I would have
park.
went,
Yeah,
just to kind of get a gauge of this park.
Because clearly there's a lot going on in this
There's
park.
a lot
And
happening.
clearly there's a lot of secretive stuff going on in the park in New York City.
So authorities continue to investigate the case. They do not consider it closed.
But the guy confessed.
I know. That's what's kind of interesting. And I will say, in the episode, they do interview a police detective who does not believe that Berkowitz acted alone. Do you remember that part?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. I understand that, but like, you gotta show. All you got is some dude's part of a cult, some dog remains,
Yeah. So I will say,
and a yellow beetle.
few years after Berkowitz was arrested, he claimed that he did have accomplices, and that they were members of the 22 disciples of hell. He said it was a group he joined actually when he was 22 years old,
Of course.
and that the killings were sacrifices to satanic gods. Berkowitz making statements like that years after being arrested.
I'm sorry. This is the same guy that said a dog told him to do it?
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to take him seriously?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So,
Whatever you say, dude.
here is your latest update as far as May 14th, 2024.
All right.
This
I'm
is
ready
the
for
most
it.
update news article I could find on Berkowitz.
Is the guy dead?
Nope.
What?
Berkowitz is 70 years old.
So how young was he when he got arrested?
I don't know. I'm not going to do math that quickly, but he was rejected in May of this year, 2024, for parole. Because he's been eligible for parole for a while now.
Wait, he was
He had
arrested.
25 years to life.
Yeah, he was arrested what year?
Oh, now we're going to do some math.
1977? So he's 22. 23.
Yeah.
Got it. He was 23 when this all happened.
So his parole was rejected, and as of today, he is still in prison in New York.
Wait, but this guy has an opportunity for parole?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When he's killed 7 people and injured 6? Or reverse
And
that?
it was supposedly a part of a satanic cult, and also sacrificed dogs and drank
but
urine.
That wasn't even
and
part
blood.
of the trial, though.
There was no trial.
I know, but I was, the urine should get you another.
The urine should get you an automatic another 10.
I'm just saying, that's a lot. Like, he admitted to shooting 13 people.
Mm-hmm.
7 or 6 of them, I'm sorry, I forgot the number,
7.
died.
Mm-hmm.
And he killed them in cold blood.
Yep.
Like, it's like.
Babe, I get it, but
and this
maybe it
guy's
was
gonna get
because
a
he
chance
did.
for parole?
Yeah, I would be shocked. He's gone up for parole several times. He's never been granted it.
I just don't think he should even get the chance.
I
think
agree
it's a
with
waste
you.
of time.
However, that is
taxpayer money.
technically part of our justice system. That was his sentence, and I remember only because of the trial that you were involved in, and I struggled with it at this time, and I still do, that we tend to give lesser sentences to people when they confess to things versus going through a trial.
Yeah, whatever. But the guy's 7 people are dead.
I agree.
And one lady's paralyzed.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not counting the other people
Well,
who were
it's
shot.
the other people who were shot. Oh, I read some of their, like, a lot of them have given statements and did interviews and things. A lot of them struggle with major, like pain from pieces of fragments of
imagine.
things that are still stuck inside them, or bones that were shattered. I mean, because a lot of people were shot in the head, they survived, but
Yeah,
it doesn't
they're not
do
the
well.
same.
Yeah. So, Son of Sam is alive and living his best life in a prison
Question.
in New York and could potentially get out on parole.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Does he request urine for drinking in prison?
In prison. I don't know. Should we send him a letter?
Yeah, I'll send him a vial of urine.
Yeah. Okay. So
That's Son of Sam.
that is Son of Sam in a nutshell.
All right, that's I mean, it's not the first I've heard of him because I had to watch this episode, but that was the first I'd ever heard of it.
Yeah. So I kind of combined the two-parter. So we'll see how next week plays out, what we decide to do. But I didn't want to spend 2 weeks talking about Son of Sam.
About a closed case.
About a closed case and a conspiracy theory that it was a cult,
Yeah.
a urine drinking cult of, in my opinion, a group of loser men who had nothing better to do with their time. And
Yeah. Well, bunch of dudes drinking urine. Come on.
I'm gonna, yeah, I mean, we could go into the nuances of what really maybe
Yeah.
the
I don't know.
undertones of that group of men was, but anyways, okay, so tell me what you got.
All right, our next one. It is actually a mystery, but a different mystery. So this is the story of Curly Green. That's his nickname. His real name is Walter Green, and he's from Omaha, Nebraska. And so Unsolved Mysteries starts out by telling that Curly Green was an older gentleman that lived in Omaha, Nebraska, in an apartment, and he lived alone. No one knew who this. No one really
He was
knew.
very
Curly.
quiet,
Kept to himself.
very routine.
You know what? Kind of like Curly. He's my kind of guy.
I knew as soon as we watched
I
this
was
episode,
like, dude,
I was like,
I like this guy.
Ben is like totally down with this man's.
The best part is his neighbors say he was cordial. And you know what that means. That means we didn't really like this guy, but we have to say nice things about him because he's dead.
Because he's no longer with us.
So they
They thought he was just this cranky old man, but was never really a jerk, but was also never nice.
everyone said he kept to himself.
Yes, he seemed very quiet.
He was
And
a
if I could
recluse.
speculate, I'm going to guess he was probably suffering from some depression. He did not seem.
Yeah. So he kept to himself. He was cordial to his neighbors, but no one knew nothing.
He did not want to be seen. He did not want to be heard. He did not want to take up space in the world. He was very quiet.
Yeah. But on April 24th, 1978.
Oh, the other thing, he was extremely dedicated to being frugal.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
I was going to say that was one thing that they mentioned.
So on April 24th, 1978, Curly died of a heart attack in his yard.
Mm-hmm.
And he had no will, no next of kin. And as they come and research this guy and like getting his belongings, they find out this guy had over $200,000 in assets. Do your calculator. I forgot to do the calculator.
Just for inflation. Okay, continue on and I will get it.
So in 1978, I looked at his, because they actually don't tell you how old he is. He's going to be 80, like 88.
Real quick, what was the year for the inflation calculator?
1978.
1978, and we're talking $200,000
$200,000
for 2024. Do you have a guess?
Ooh, man, that's got to be. I'm gonna say 1.5 million.
Ooh, not on track tonight.
Dang it.
963,000.
Okay.
But still, I mean,
way
close
off.
to $1 million
So yeah, close to $1 million
in today's money. Okay, so
and
yes,
he's
continue.
living in an apartment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, but here's the problem. This guy has no will. He has no next of kin. No one knows. And when they start talking to people, no one really knows anything about this guy.
He's a very private man, even to the people that they considered him friends, they were kind of surprised that they knew so little about him.
Yeah. So, it's now 10 years later because this episode of Unsolved Mysteries airs in 1988.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, no one has claimed his fortune, his $200,000. And they tell you that his $200,000 is tied up in real estate, stocks, and bonds.
And gold coins.
And his coin collection, his rare coin collection.
Yeah.
It, at that point, is the largest unclaimed assets.
It's, considered probate, right? The state basically holds it in probate, and at that point, it was the largest in the state history.
In Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and they're still trying to figure it out. Josh Butler is an heir investigator, H-E-I-R, heir investigator. And I'm like, dude, how do I get on that gig?
Yeah.
He starts digging into it, and he still, to this day,
he's like
found...
digging through old newspaper articles, interviewing people. He is trying to find out anything about this man.
So Unsolved Mysteries kind of puts it, they start with that and put it at that. Like, this is our mystery. Like, here's this guy who lives in an apartment. Come to find out, he owns the apartment complex that he lives in. But the way they reenact it, it's kind of the same thing. We think we talked about this before. It looks like a house that's been broken up into like 4 apartments.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess he lives in one. He rents the other of them out.
Yep. I kind of got the same vibe. It wasn't like some massive apartment complex.
No, it wasn't like a big apartment complex.
Yeah.
So it looked like he owned the building that he lived in, which no one
even knew that. Yeah.
Know that.
Which, if you were a landlord, Ben, 100% would not want any person knowing.
Oh, no.
If you had one of the rooms in the...
Absolutely not.
No one would know that you were the owner. Exactly.
No. But, and then they're like, everyone's asking, how did he gain all this money?
Yeah.
They don't know. And I kind of think it's funny because I'm like, nowadays, it's not that hard for like even a small person, like someone that doesn't make a lot of money, to accumulate a large amount of money.
Yeah, if you're dedicated, a lot of people can do great things with even smaller amounts of money.
Yeah. I mean, because then they interview his like one friend, Catherine, who has a tie to his earlier life.
Yeah, which I actually thought was very endearing.
Yeah.
This is not just a friend. This is literally a lifelong friend.
Yeah. She's known him supposedly since he was 17 years old. And she talks about that. He was super frugal. Like, he would leave for the day to go to work, and he would put a can of food on the pilot light.
They picked like chili or something in the reenactment episode, and I thought at first that this man was so frugal that he was eating dog food.
Yeah, that he would put like a can of food on the pilot light, and by the time he got home...
Can you explain to our listeners what a pilot light is in case people don't know?
Yeah, so like if your pilot light for your gas stove or your fireplace, it's just it's just a little light.
Baby little flame. It's not a light bulb, it's a flame.
Because then when you turn it on, like when you turn on your stove or that, like that...
Old stoves, you used to be able to see your pilot light.
Pilot light to fire up your
Our
burner.
gas stove now, you don't see the pilot light because there's a click, 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 click.
Yeah, it lights it itself.
Yeah.
But
back in the day, there was a tiny little baby flame that always stayed lit, and you turn the gas on.
Our fireplace at home, originally, it starts the pilot light. And then...
But the pilot light nowadays doesn't stay all the time.
But in a lot of places... like when I lived in Indiana, a lot of people there was always a pilot light on. And if your pilot light goes off, like you got to go and crawl underneath place, whatever it is.
No, the house I grew up for a big majority of my life, we had a floor heater. It was a giant grate in the ground. And in the summertime, I think my parents would turn off the pilot, but once it started getting cold, my dad would crawl like under the house and light the pilot light.
Yeah, you got to light it.
And then you could always see the tiny little, anyway, so I thought Just for anyone who doesn't know, yeah, old stoves, there used to be a little micro, like barely more than what you get off a candle.
Yeah, it's like a
I
candle
mean,
burner.
not even a candle, a match. Like,
Yeah. So he would like put the can on the pile of light, and then by the time he got home, he would eat it. Supposedly,
it was
according to
warm
Catherine,
enough to
eat.
to
And
eat.
so, like, when I'm hearing this, I'm like, well, clearly, like, the guy didn't spend any money, so he saved every dollar he got. So,
Mm-hmm.
accumulating $200,000 over, I mean, like I
If you're
said,
trying to cut your gas bill down to the point where you never turn your stove on,
yeah. I mean, he was 1978. He was 83 years old when
Yeah.
he died.
yeah, that adds up at over
So,
years.
yeah, that adds up. So he was very frugal. But then, Unsolved Mysteries, we get into the backstory of this Curly Green.
Yeah.
And they tell, like, he has a kind of a sad story.
Yeah, he
behind
kind
it.
of has a sad origin story.
And they tell this story. Kind of interested how much they know about his origin story, but that they don't know
I'm guessing only because of his childhood
because
friend.
of Catherine.
Yeah.
So supposedly, Walter Green. They go back. And they say a lot of this Curly Green started. It might have been a sad story, but there's a love story behind his life, right? So they say that he jumped on a train at 17 years old.
I found this on the web. Did it say that? Check it out.
Sorry if anyone just heard that. Suri inserted herself into our conversation.
Yeah. No, sorry. Thank you. I'm good. 17 years old, he hopped on a train and he jumped off near Omaha. And it's a little town called Schuler.
Omaha. What's that from?
That's Peyton Manning.
Omaha.
Dude, come on, Peyton Manning. It's my favorite football
Sorry,
player.
I every time I hear that, that's all I can see is Peyton Manning with his hand up in the air, waving it around, yelling Omaha at people.
So he jumps on a train to Omaha, or close to Omaha, little town, Schuler, near Omaha. Jumps off, and he's 17 years old, and he's trying to
He just wanders into town.
Right? Now,
It's
this
a
would have,
different time back then.
yeah, this would have been around 1912.
Yeah.
So I had to do that because I'm looking at his date of birth here. So a guy named Al Rominger, he sees him, picks him up, and gives him a ride to his house, and they feed him that night.
Yeah, he offers to bring him home and feed him dinner.
Just goes to show the world was a different place.
Different place back then. If you showed up and was like, hey, I found this teenager on the side of the road, just wandered into town, I thought we could give him dinner.
Yeah. And
Like-
this man's got several daughters.
Mhm.
One of them was Catherine, who
Yep.
was 9 years old at the time.
So 9.
Yeah. She's 9 years old at the time. And he's got a daughter that's his age, Jessamine.
Jessamine.
And he
Love at first sight.
he falls in love with her.
At dinner that night.
Yeah. Thinks she's beautiful. So he ends up finding work in town as a mechanic. And back then, cars are new.
They were-
technically Ford hasn't even been invented yet. So I guess he was pretty good with his hands, pretty good at fixing stuff.
Yeah, they said he had a knack for working on motor cars, which
Yeah.
was a brand new industry at the time.
Yeah. Figures it out, makes enough money to move into a boarding house. So
Yeah.
I just dude, this guy literally gets off in the middle of nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
picks himself up by his bootstraps,
Yeah.
is willing to do anything, and just is finding his way. And I think that's pretty cool. And then 1917 rolls around. What happens?
The war.
U.S. enters World War I, and he joins the army, and goes over. I actually looked at his service. He served for 2 years.
Okay.
1919. War
Okay.
ended in 1918, but whatever. He serves for 2 years, And he comes back, and now he's looking for Jessamine.
And she had become a nurse.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
she ended up training to be a nurse for the war also.
For the war as well. Mm-hmm.
But he shows up at her house. She's not there.
Oh, I know. The reenactment, he like shows up in his cute little uniform with a bushel of flowers on this, and like she's nowhere to be found.
She's moved to Omaha.
She moved to the big city.
So not too far away. So he follows her.
Yeah, so he decides, I'm going to go.
So then he gets a job as a mechanic at first. Then he becomes a night watchman at the Union Pacific Railroad. And he's just trying to make ends meet. And they pretty much kind of tell the story that she wasn't into him as much. And he wasn't making it. They kind of put it as like...
kind of make it sound like she didn't want anything to do with him because he wasn't wealthy.
Yeah, that he wasn't going to make enough money for her.
And I was like, could it be possible that this was during like part of the women's suffrage movement and she had become a nurse and was working and maybe wanted to experience the city a little? I mean, I don't know. I felt bad that it was just like she didn't want anything to do with him because he wasn't rich.
Yeah. And then they say Jessamine married another man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which she has the right to do.
So then Curly is just lonely. And
he's heartbroken over this.
Supposedly.
Yeah. And fair, both things are allowed. She is allowed to say, no, thank you. I'm not interested for any reason. And he is also allowed to decide that that was the love of his life and he's wrecked from it.
Yeah. So he never marries.
Nope.
Never has any kids.
Nope. Never even forms a serious connection with anyone else.
And he just lives in Omaha for the rest of his days.
Mm-hmm.
And dies in 1978. Now, they try to like find who might have been close to him. The only person they get is Riley Marr.
Yeah, buddy of his.
Who's his barber.
Yeah, I mean, that says a lot right there, right? But I will say Curly was even brave enough, because I imagine this man is so shy and introverted. He invited his barber over to his house to like play cards and drink a beer.
Yeah, so even the barber says, I don't really know much about this guy.
And I felt bad because he even said, he's like, I thought we were friends, but he would not ever open up to me.
So he said like he went to his house one time for coffee, and they sat around and drank coffee and talked. Mm-hmm. He said he noticed a postcard from New York, and he asked him about it, and he kind of took the postcard out of his hand and said, I don't want, don't worry about that.
Yeah, he said it was like an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah. And then, like, when they interview Catherine, the younger sister of Jessamine, and,
and this girl's known him her entire life almost.
Yeah. So where did he come from? She says, he said that he came from a train from Denver.
Yeah.
He was born in Montana, but he was living with his mom and stepdad in Denver, and he hopped on a train and came.
I have a feeling that was not a good household.
Well, we'll get into that.
Okay. That was just my speculation from as we were watching the episode. Like, something made this teenage boy run away from home.
Yeah, so...
I shouldn't say run away, but decide he'd be better off just figuring it out on his own.
So he... that's pretty much our story. And that we're going back to Josh Butler, who is the air investigator.
Yeah.
He says, someone had said to him that Curly had mentioned that his brother was killed in a shootout earlier.
Yeah.
He said the only thing he could find in Montana was a guy named Al Green killed in a shootout in 1921.
Mm-hmm.
But Al Green had a different father's name than Curly's. So, and I looked this up. Curly had said that his dad's name was Harry Albert Green. And and supposedly Al Green had a different father, completely different name.
Yeah, so there was speculation that maybe it was his cousin
or something. But this investigator couldn't find anything. He couldn't find anything about his dad. He couldn't find anything about his prior life. And And that's pretty much where it ends. So
Yeah,
they're
the
asking
episode just
for-
kind of says, "Hey, if any of this sounds familiar to you, this shootout, this last name, these locations, or even like a like they even bring up the postcard thing,
Mhm.
um, to reach out to Unsolved Mysteries."
Yeah. And so that's this, like, they show they only have 5 pictures of
Mhm.
this guy.
He was a very handsome young man.
Yeah, they show of his early age, kind of his middle life in the military, and then his older
Mhm.
life. I will say they do tell the older picture of him is with that weird hat on, because he was part of the Masonic Lodge.
Oh, yeah.
I was intrigued by that.
Yeah, that is
Those
intriguing.
lodges are kind of interesting. They've
They
always
are.
intrigued me.
They've intrigued me too because I grew up with the Moose Lodge.
Yeah. And so I'm like, does anyone in that lodge know
But again, the same
anything?
thing like, hey, that big building, can we go in there? No.
No. What goes on? I don't know.
Well, and they're always in like these small towns and it's all old men usually. But yeah, you don't really know a lot about some of these lodges. But yeah, the Moose Lodge was the one I grew up knowing. But yeah, you didn't know anything. I still can't tell you anything about him today.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
And it's even possible I think my grandpa was part of him because that hat looks familiar to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where that one ends. They're
Okay.
pretty much asking, hey, if anyone knows anything, come forward.
Okay, did Unsolved Mystery solve this mystery?
No.
No update. Like no update, like no
No,
reports came back from
No,
that
so
show.
I dug into this. So, and they do show a picture of his birth certificate,
Okay.
which is a little misleading. So this birth certificate, I dug into it. He's the one that filled it out. Curly Green.
Oh.
Curly
Well, he
Green
could have
did.
put whatever he wanted on there.
And he filled it out in 1943. So the guy is 48 years old at the time.
Huh.
It was issued to him from Nebraska. He fills out all the information. He puts that his birth date is March 22nd, 1895. His father is Albert Harry Green. His mother is Anne Marine Green. His father was born in England, and his mom was born in Albania or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Another country, right? And that he was born in Kendall, Montana. But all of this information, it wasn't researched. That is from him.
Yeah. He could have put whatever he wanted on there.
He put all of that
Mm-hmm.
on there. I will say, they do end it. They end the mystery by saying
The episode, you mean?
the episode by saying there was one thing. Flowers were sent to the funeral.
Oh,
by
yes,
Mrs.
yes.
Joel Greener from Denver, Colorado.
Mm-hmm. Did anyone reach out to Joel?
No.
They were like, hey, we got these. I'm like, there's your first hot lead right there. Did someone call and say, hey, how did you know this man?
Yeah. So, but back then, like, there's no internet. You don't know.
You could have called the flower company that it came from.
I don't know. So I tried to dig into this guy.
Okay.
I even got on one of those
Ancestry
searches,
searches.
and I found him. But all the information that is put on there is from this episode.
From the birth certificate that
And the
he
only
filled out.
the only source for him is from that birth certificate.
On Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I actually pulled up the image of it.
Mm-hmm.
They also have a draft certificate for World War II, which he
Okay.
filled out the same information
Okay.
because you had to fill that out during World War II.
But he wasn't drafted for World War II.
No, he was too old.
Okay,
By
but he
that
still
time.
had
But
to
you
fill
had
it out.
All males had to do it.
Okay.
I mean, because by the time World War II comes around,
Did you have to
he's-
register for the draft when you turned 18?
well, all men have to register for selective service at 18 years old.
Oh,
So yeah, I did. I
you
had to.
did.
Yeah.
So our sons have to?
Yes. Everyone has to.
Ugh.
All males have to. They're talking about making all females do it too, but that's
No,
neither here nor
thank you.
there. But yeah, so no, I had to.
Okay.
So yeah, and those are the only sources. from him. And then
It's just weird to me because I get that that was a long time ago, but really in the world of like documentation of people and the census and different things like that, this is not that old.
well, so that was the
We were
thing.
pretty good as a country by that point in record keeping.
So that's the thing is Curly Green. I looked because we have census from back like in the early 1800s. I've
Mhm.
looked at these census before.
Yeah.
Curly Green only shows up in the census at like it starts in like 1920 or 1930 and then 1940, 50, 60, 70.
Oh, so then that
He's non-existent
before then.
before then. And then I looked at his parents. His parents never show up in any census.
Huh.
The only documents that we have that these people even exist is from his birth certificate. So when I looked on this,
Did anyone ever get this probate money?
no. Went to the state.
Yeah.
Goes to the state.
Yeah, after so long in probate it does. Yeah.
It's gone to the state by now. They've got it. So I did find out that that investigator,
Mhm.
he had a theory, and he never explained where he got it or what evidence he had.
Okay.
But what was it? Josh Butler. He believed that Curly was never from where he said he was from.
No, yeah. It's the things aren't adding up.
Yeah, that he actually grew up in Wisconsin in an orphanage. But he said there was no good record keepings from the orphanage, and that
Yeah.
he left that orphanage at 17 and found his way to Nebraska
Yeah.
and started his life.
Hmm.
Which, honestly, this is a theory, but it makes more sense because here's the thing. If his mother, he said he lived with his mother in Denver with his stepfather. His mother should be in the census from those early 1900s.
Yeah.
So when I plugged her name in,
Nothing.
no records of her in any census, especially in the Denver area or in the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure there's someone with that name, but
Well,
nothing
that makes me
adds
wonder
up.
because if you think about the orphanages back then, when he would have been born in the late 1800s?
1895.
Yeah, imagine if a single woman got pregnant. A lot of the times these women went to like technically religious organizations of a lot of sorts. They'd birth the child and then the child would be taken in by that church and raised in an orphanage. And a lot of it didn't have any record keeping.
That makes sense, but clearly we don't even know. I mean, this is a theory.
It makes your heart
It
break.
does.
But then you're also like, this guy went on to make something of himself. He just chose to stay alone and to grow up in a world with no family and no deep connections.
Well, and to think, I mean, this guy, he grew up in an orphanage and he made something. And I'm going to guess growing up in an orphanage in the early 1900s
Was not easy.
not easy, and that's probably why he was so quiet and kept to himself.
I cannot imagine that kid did not have terrible experiences.
But here's the thing, we don't know.
Yeah, but we don't know because he chose, and it's also not uncommon that a man, especially in that day, you did not talk about the things that potentially had happened to him.
And that's the other thing. He served 2 years in World War One.
Yeah.
World War One was pretty horrific.
Yeah.
And he served on the Eastern Front. And they said like one of his jobs was to like take the wounded to like makeshift hospitals. So like this guy saw some pretty terrible things.
Yeah.
Which that can change a man. So,
And
this
then
man's
to
life-
like lose the love of his life, and maybe he just decided Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. That episode to me, it genuinely is a unsolved mystery.
Well, it is a mystery, and we don't have the only information we have is kind of what some people tell us, and then, but the information they had is what he told them, and he could have told them
He
anything.
could have told him
he
anything.
wanted.
He could have told him that Ronald McDonald was his dad.
Yeah, and so if he didn't want anyone to know, no one was gonna know.
Man, what a different world, because now if you wanted to walk
so
away
much
and start
documents.
something else, there's no way.
There's no way. Like, there's
Yeah.
so much documents and stuff of like who you are, where you were born, like who you belong to, whatever. Like, yeah, you couldn't do what this guy did.
Yeah.
And but let me just touch one more thing.
Okay.
Okay, I do feel it was a little unjust of what they did to Jessamine.
Okay.
They kind of painted her as, I mean, they painted her that she didn't love him,
She just kind of blew him off because he wasn't good enough.
and then she went and married some other dude,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I found her marriage certificate.
Okay.
Again, I looked her up on the ancestry thing. Actually, there's not a lot of stuff on her either.
Oh, really?
No, but she married a dude in Kentucky in 1938.
Oh,
Yeah, that changes it a little
that's
bit.
very different than they made it sound like.
Well, he comes home from the war in 1919. Okay?
So 18 plus years later?
Almost 20 years later, she marries some dude in Kentucky.
Huh.
It doesn't say if they had any kids.
Yeah.
It just says who her parents were and her siblings, which
Yeah.
Catherine's on there. She had multiple
Yeah.
siblings. That's kind of the end of the road for her. Like, she's in Omaha for a while, and then she just shows up in Kentucky, marries this dude.
Yeah.
And
So it wasn't, yeah, and the episode made it sound very much like
Yeah.
she rebuffed his advances and
for another dude.
for another man.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, no, like,
Yeah, she could have just easily said thanks, but no thanks.
or it just didn't work out.
Yeah. Guess what? We all have exes.
Yeah.
And
So
do you imagine the burden of realizing that your ex literally lived the rest of their life in solitaire with no one and nothing and never made another connection because he couldn't get over you?
yeah, but she also didn't like she did.
But that's the
wasn't
thing. She
married-
didn't ask for that.
But she also didn't marry for 20 years
Yeah.
after that either. So it's
Yeah.
not like she didn't love him but loved someone else. Like, clearly it just didn't work out. And then years
And then
later,
she went on to live another 20 years of her life. Yeah.
and marry some.
She probably
other
was like,
dude.
who were you talking about? Like the boy I dated before we went off to war?
Yeah,
She's like, it's like someone asking you about your junior high boyfriend. You're like, who?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that because I was like, it was a little misleading.
Yeah.
in
Oh, I
that
think that's
aspect.
awesome that you found her and kind of brought full circle that she was definitely
I
painted.
just
She was
think
painted
it
very
clearly
differently
just
in the
didn't work
episode.
out
Yeah.
between the two. It's not like she ran off.
This
with
was no
another dude.
Notebook.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling and who's the other guy in the Notebook?
I wrote you every day. Something like
She's
that.
like stuck between two lovers
Yeah.
after coming home from the war.
Exactly. They kind of painted it as that.
Maybe Nicholas Sparks watched Unsolved Mysteries and that gave him the idea
gave
for the
him-
Notebook.
of the Notebook. So yeah,
Because you have one wealthy man and one like farm boy.
but I think it was sad, but I like Curly Green. He seemed like a good dude.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm sad that he died solo, but it also seemed like that was a choice he made to live his life very.
and I can't knock him for it, man.
I like people too much.
But I bet, I'll just say this: if you rebuffed me, I would.
You would have. You're
I would
saying
I would have
that
lived
if 17
in sorrow
years
for the rest
ago
of
I
my
would have
life.
said no, thank you.
I would still be single to this day, and I'd be living a sad, lonely life.
Tiny
just
little
thinking
apartment,
of-
just
thinking about Sierra and how I missed
missed out on the
yeah, the
the
love,
love
of, my
of
life.
your life in this fleeting moment that we shared together.
Just glad it worked out.
I'm so thankful that it worked out.
So, all right,
Okay.
that's our Curly Green story.
All right. The first, couple episodes had 4 stories. Now, since the ghost ship, we're down to 3.
Yeah, we're pretty much doing 3 now.
Yeah. The third story was interesting. And full disclosure, you could do a whole entire season on this case. And in fact, I'll give a shout out in a little while of another podcast that has gone into it, because this turns into a much bigger thing that has continuing court cases over the next decade.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, Unsolved Mysteries shows us this tiny, tiny little sleepy town, Waverly, Georgia. Population is only 825.
Now or back then?
Back then.
Okay.
So this is in 1985.
Yeah.
Actually, real quick, let me look up. I should have you have the computer so you can do it. I'd be interested to see. I cannot imagine.
That's what I mean. I remember them saying it was a real small town. I'd be curious if it was still super small.
Population is actually 259 people now.
So it shrunk a lot.
It's gone down a lot. And I'm going to guess it sounds like there was a paper mill in the city that employed quite a bit of people, or the lumber industry of some sort. I'm going to guess that might have dried up and gone away. And every time that happens in these small towns, you see people leaving. Mm-hmm. So the Rising Daughters Baptist Church for many years served as a place of worship in this community that was majority African American, predominantly a black community.
Okay.
But it also served as a gathering place for the small town. So a lot of the community members came and spent time at this church, often during the week.
Yeah.
On March 11th, 1985, this tiny little community was shattered by a double murder. Harold was a well-respected deacon in the church. He was a retired pulpwood worker, a handyman, a volunteer firefighter, a member of the county jury commission, and a spokesperson for the black community. His beautiful wife, Thelma, was closely involved with church affairs. She was a devoted wife and surrogate mother to her niece. So they raised her niece since birth. So
Okay.
not sure the backstory there, but since birth, they raised this little girl as their own. They had been married for over 40 years and were well-loved members of this community. There was even people that noted the vast amount of attendance for their funerals. There was a lot of people that had very, very good things to say.
Yeah, I imagine that. Well, I mean, I will say the people that they interviewed, like, you could tell
You could tell
they
that
were sincere.
when you live in a community of 800 people, these people become very close with each other.
Well,
For better or for worse, living in a small town. I mean, yeah, the small town I grew up in had 3,000 people. And we went to the park the other day. We're, visiting, and I took my kids to one of the parks I grew up playing it with. And we literally drove into this park, and there was a barbecue going on. And I said, I went to high school with that entire group of people. And that's a town of 3,000.
Yeah.
So I cannot imagine a community of 800.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I imagine, like I said, what the people, as they were interviewing and they're talking about these people, like, you could tell, like, they were very sincere
they interviewed
their love for
the
them
local
as a
sheriff
community.
department, even like some people that worked in the state department that helped interview or that helped investigate this case, all knew of this couple and had nothing but great things to say about them. So 7 p.m. on that night, which we were, March 11th, Harold and his wife, Thelma, were holding their weekly Monday night Bible class. Could not be more Southern than... And they show this beautiful little white church building, and everyone's fanning themselves. There's probably not an air conditioner in sight in that community.
No, not
But
back then.
yeah, they're showing these This is the church. So I looked up the church. The church that they did all the reenactment is the actual location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine so.
There was one of the women at the service or the Bible study had to excuse herself early because she had to go pick up her daughter from work. So this woman gets up from the Bible study. It seemed like it was getting ready to wrap up. She steps out into the foyer of the church, and there is a gentleman leaning against the wall just inside the church building. And she asks him if there's anything that she can help him with. And he says, yeah, I want to speak to somebody. And she said, okay. And he said, I want to speak to somebody in there. So she actually opened up the doors into the meeting house, and he pointed to Harold and said, I want to speak to him. And she said, okay. So she actually walks back into the chapel, pulls Harold aside and says, hey, there's a man out in the foyer and he wants to talk to you. And she follows Harold out to the foyer, does a quick sort of, here's person A, here's person B, and quickly leaves because at this point she's worried about being late to go pick up her daughter from work. So she leaves right then and there. The other thing noted is that a few other women had caught a glimpse of this gentleman, but no one really got a good look. And no one recognized him, which is, again, in a town of this size,
Pretty
you've
rare.
got 20 people.
Someone
would have known that was so and so, or
recognize this
exactly,
guy.
or had even seen him around before.
Yeah.
Harold was out there for only a few seconds, and the man pulled a gun on him. Harold fought off the attacker and actually wrestled him to the ground. However, the man was able to get some shots off and ended up shooting him 4 times. 3 times in the chest and then once in the back of the head. Just terrible.
In the back of the head.
Yeah.
Huh?
Thelma, which just blows my mind, bless her heart, runs out to, once she hears the shots being fired, instead of running and hiding or trying to get away, she runs towards the area of the commotion to try to intervene and be with her husband.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the man shot her once in the upper chest. When the shooting started, several of the women ran from the area, fleeing the church building. However, a small group of them hid in one of the church offices inside the building. They actually got in there, they closed the door, and they tried to call for help on the telephone. And the phone was dead, which just encapsulates any person who watched scary movies growing up, like your worst fear. That you hear something in the night and you try to...
It's a scene from a scary movie.
It's a scene from a scary movie. All my anxiety goes up when you hear that. The phone lines were dead, so they sat in silence for 20 minutes and just waited.
That's probably got to be the longest 20 minutes.
Bless these
of
women's
their
heart.
life.
Like, yeah, they sat there in silence waiting.
I bet it felt like 2 hours.
I bet it did. And to not even know what was happening outside of these tiny little room that they were in. So finally, one of the women armed herself with a broom. Okay? And dashed for her car. She makes it out. She noticed an unfamiliar vehicle in the parking lot. It left around the same time she did. She drove very quickly to a nearby convenience store and was able to call for help. Okay. I love that she got a broom. Bless, also, again, could you not have a more southern than this grandmother coming out with a broom, right? That's every, southern kid's worst fear. That or her shoe. You were going to be in trouble, right? So Harold and Thelma were found lying on their backs in a pool of blood inside the foyer of the church. No blood samples were taken. as the local police assumed that all of the blood belonged to the two.
Okay.
That does come up later, so I thought that was important to know.
All right.
There was physical evidence found at the scene, including 5 bullet casings, 5 plastic shirt buttons, 2 Pepsi bottles, a smudged mirror, 4 pieces of cut telephone line, the telephone box, which had smudges and or fingerprints on it, and 2 pairs of glasses. The working theory at this point in Unsolved Mysteries was that this was some kind of drifter. This church building was located kind of right on a highway that was used back and forth by quite a bit of people. There's a cat behind me at the moment, so if you hear
Dude,
rustling around, he is on one, but we needed to let him in here because he was going crazy at the door. So this church building was located in an area that a lot of transient people would come in and request.
Pass by.
Yeah, they would request food or money or a place to stay or different things like that. It didn't talk that if the church entertained a lot of that, I cannot imagine they turned a lot of people away, but this seemed to be a common thing that people would stop in at the church and ask for things from them. However, if the motive had been robbery, there was over $300 left in Howard's wallet.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money in 1985.
Yeah.
Where's my inflation calculator? Okay, 1985, and we just have 300.
$650.
You're gonna say $650, $875, so almost $1,000
That's a lot
sitting
of
in
money.
Harold's pocket. And that was still there. Other evidence suggested, though, that this was premeditated because the cops found that the phone lines had
Well,
been
he cut
cut.
the phone lines.
Yeah.
So, I mean, clearly he knew before he walked into the building
That he was going to do something
gonna
where the
do
police
something
did not need to be called.
that he didn't want people calling before he finished.
We are in a room right now with a dog and a cat. The cat is attacking my head, and I am pretty sure that the dog is just letting...
I think he just farted. It smells terrible.
I don't even know. I'm so sorry, you guys. We are not a professional podcast, but I'm trying really hard. But we are now currently in a room with
It smells awful.
a farting dog. The agent that had been interviewed believes that it could also have been part of a premeditated armed robbery attempt. Years later, the murder of Harold and Thema still remains a mystery.
So this was, they aired this 3 years after, and it was still an open case.
Yeah. Were these random? Was this a violent stranger? Was this, someone who had a beef with... And in 1985 in Georgia, you did have to ask, so this was they did know that he was a white man, so did this have anything to do where race was a factor?
Well, and I will say this, they had the Georgia Bureau of Investigations on it.
They took this very serious.
Yeah, they had the state, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, they had the county guys on it, and they seemed that they really dug into this.
Rooster. No. Out. Sorry, now he's trying to eat the cat food, which is the last thing that we need.
So,
there was a lot of people working on this case.
But it seemed like, too, the only... And they really didn't have any evidence. The only thing they had to go on was this pair of glasses. That's all they talked about.
So, these are the following things that we know from Unsolved Mysteries. The killer did not take any money. However, he did search beforehand and cut the phone lines.
So, yeah, he
singled out one person in the church and asked him to come out and be separated. He shot him several times, including once in the head, which shows that he wanted him dead. He wasn't just trying to scare him to get him off of him from trying to take the gun or whatever.
Just some struggle of some sort.
And then there was the pair of glasses, which they believed were left from someone who didn't have a lot of money because they were broken and they were mismatched and different things. That's literally all they have.
Yeah, they literally said like they didn't really have anything.
Yeah.
And no one knew who this guy was.
Yeah.
In this town, which it was rare, and that is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one seemed to recognize this guy. And especially because that one lady, it wasn't just a passing by.
No,
Like,
she had
an
an interaction with him.
him.
And at
did a
one point, she
sketch.
was brought in. She did a sketch, and I didn't go into that because it kind of gets into the weeds a little bit in this episode. She was brought in. She gave a sketch that didn't come up from anything, but then the police officer later saw a report with a sketch that looked like exactly the same, and he tried to connect some dots. So they were trying to, for years, find anything that they could to
When
try
they
to
were
bring some
broadening
closure.
their search out, really trying to figure out.
Yeah, at one
who
point
this
they
guy
even
was.
brought her in for a lineup. She couldn't identify anybody in that, was kind of thought it might be one person, but wasn't sure because his hair was different. So they believed that someone who committed this crime, especially if it was race motivated, would have gone on and bragged about it, talked about it, or shared some information about it. And they are asking for someone to help send in some information. So at the end of the episode we watched, it says it's updated.
Yeah,
Okay?
just drop this bombshell.
Okay. Hate to break it to you. It's not.
Okay.
It's not solved.
Okay, because
So-
they said someone was convicted.
They did say that. And technically someone was.
Okay, but now he's unconvicted.
He's unconvicted. So Dennis Perry had been a suspect early on in the investigation. In 1988, an anonymous tip came in saying that he looked like the composite sketch of the killer.
Was it after the Unsolved Mysteries aired?
In 1988,
That would have been the year it aired.
yeah. He lived in the area until 1984 when he moved to Jonesboro, Georgia, near Atlanta. He'd got a job at a concrete company. Investigators at the time actually spoke with his boss, who said that he was working in Jonesboro near 300 miles from the church until 5 p.m. that day.
What time
Yeah.
was he killed?
7?
300 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can't do it.
Yeah. Yes, you can't. Exactly. However, I don't know if because they wanted this case solved so much, it seemed like a lot of tunnel vision happened.
Okay.
Okay. He had mentioned something, and the investigators claim that they heard Perry say that Harold had strong hands because he was a wood pulp worker.
Okay.
They believed that the only way he could have said that is because he was the one who had like this hand-to-hand combat with him. So they took that to a grand jury. The grand jury indicted him.
Off a statement?
Mm-hmm. And again, I did not go. So this is where I'm going to tell you. There is an entire season of Undisclosed
Okay.
dedicated to this
one case.
wrongful conviction.
Oh, okay.
Okay? With that said, I'm not going to get into any side here nor there. The original podcast that started most people off on our journey in the world of true crime is what? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Serial
Sure.
with Sarah Kanan. So, Murders in the Building, the one that talks
Yeah,
like
I
that,
know.
she's making fun of her. Anyways, was the case about the boy who killed his ex-girlfriend at the high school.
I don't know any of this.
What? You don't know
Alright.
anything? I watched a documentary about it. I think you've kind of casually watched it. Anyways,
No recollection.
the Sinat, I cannot pronounce his name right now. Sinat, people are going to be yelling in there, I think. Anyways, I adore the host of the Undisclosed podcast. She's one of the people that I follow several of her podcasts. Her name is Rabia Chachi. She is an attorney who helped Adnan, thank you, Adnan get out of prison and she's one of the people that started this undisclosed podcast.
Okay.
I will say I don't know if Adnan is guilty or innocent.
So that's the guy that got convicted for this?
That's the original. So I've given you a whole background.
Oh, okay.
So Serial started out with the Adnan case, which is most people how they discovered podcasts even existed, let alone there was this whole world of true crime. Rabia Chachi was one of the people, Adnan's attorney, that got Sarah Kanan to do that podcast.
Okay.
She has gone on to work with a lot of innocent projects.
Okay.
Okay. She has a podcast called Undisclosed.
Got it.
And they work with cases that have been taken on by the Innocence Project.
Okay.
Okay. So their 2018 season is about this case. I have not looked into it. There has been some critiques about Rabia that she gets very blindsided. Tunnel vision in different ways than the law enforcement does. I will say she believes that Scott Peterson is innocent. You remember Scott Peterson?
You want to like shoved his family in a barrel or something like that?
Nope, that was the guy from Colorado. Scott Peterson was the one with the pregnant wife, and she went missing, and he was like had an affair. If I showed you a picture of him, you would know. But he was convicted. He tried to run. He lived in California. He tried to run to Mexico. Dyed his hair blonde. Was having a midlife crisis. Anyways, she believes that Scott Peterson is innocent.
Okay.
I could not disagree with her more on that. So there's been a lot of critiques about Undisclosed, whether it is helpful or harmful to swaying people's opinions on...
Yeah, but everyone's got an opinion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're allowed to say this, but unfortunately, for good or bad, some of these podcasts have gone on to get convictions overturned, mostly because people get behind it and you get champion people trying to
but that's failures in the law enforcement community.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, I mean, if you're going to listen to someone that just sits around and talks about it on a podcast and get someone out of prison over that, like, without doing your own research?
Yes, absolutely. And like I will say, I'm a big fan of Rabia. She's an attorney. She's extremely smart. She's very talented at what she does. I actually put a lot of credit into when she says something, she knows what she's talking about. I was a little surprised about the Scott Peterson thing. But with that said, she did a thing on this. So anyways, my whole point is some people have found her opinions a little bit problematic. I haven't listened to this episode of Undisclosed, but if you are interested in more on this case or learning the whole nuances of actually...
But it sounds like they
dive much deeper into the original case and getting all the way through it. So I'll just kind of give you the recaps that they did convince a grand jury to indict him on 2 counts of malice murder. And then on January 13th, 2000, he was arrested near his home. After 3 hours of deliberation, a jury found him guilty of murder. And in order to avoid the death sentences, he waived his right to an appeal.
Really?
Yeah. He was then given 2 life sentences.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't even know that was a thing you could...
Yeah, I mean, it's an offer they can offer.
Okay. So in March 2015, so 15 years after he'd been, incarcerated, the Georgia Innocence Project filed a motion seeking a new trial for Perry based on advancements in DNA testing from the things that they had collected at the scene, including the glasses.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you, the Innocence Project does very good work. They probably get thousands of letters a year from inmates saying that they're innocent, and they take very, very few cases on because they do it for free.
Yeah.
So that holds some weight to it if they think it's enough to even try to get something off the ground.
I guess, do we know, like, what evidence did they have to convict him?
I don't know anything about the first case. I just only
Looked up his...
I got that one statement that was one of the things used in front of the grand jury. And I'm not sure how the original trial went.
Okay.
So in 2018, the Undisclosed podcast began working with the Georgia Innocence Project on the case. The one part I did listen to, like the first 20 minutes of the episode today, the host of the show interviewed some of the law enforcement agents that worked on this case. They were actually very much in support of people doing their due diligence of their own work. And they interviewed, and they seemed, at least, and tensions can always change, but it seems like at first those people were involved with at least giving their information over to these investigators. Okay. They took on this case. They found evidence that suggested that Perry's constitutional rights were violated at his trial. So Judge Stephen Scarlett overturned Perry's conviction and granted him a new trial. So whatever they found, enough that a judge decided that he deserved a new trial.
Okay.
He said that had the DNA evidence been available during the time of the trial, it probably would have produced a different verdict. On July 23rd, he was released from prison on his own recognizance. On July 21st, Keith Higgins, the newly appointed DA, dismissed all charges against Perry. As a result, he was exonerated. He addressed the court saying that he'd hoped the real killer would be found, and in April 2022, he was awarded $1.2 million by the state for his wrongful imprisonment. The investigation into the murders remains active and ongoing. As of today, no charges have been filed.
So they found DNA on the glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't match this guy.
I'm going to guess it didn't match this guy.
But it hasn't matched anybody else.
Well, so it seems like it might match. Familiar DNA matched it to a woman who I think has a son and some nephews, maybe. And it seems like that only came out in 2022, but they haven't done anything else with that. At least that I could find. Okay. Now, if the case is still open and ongoing, especially because it seems like now that it's been on a podcast and it's been on Unsolved Mysteries and all of that, maybe they're keeping some information close to the chest in hopes to do anything. So that's kind of, that one seemed like it kind of got a little messy. I was a little caught off guard when it said that there was an update and that someone had been convicted. Well, and then when I started doing some research, I was like, this is saying that it's unsolved. And there is a ton of information. I think that season of the podcast that goes into this is several episodes long. It seems like there is a lot. So I feel bad that I don't have all of the information. But since we're just recapping Unsolved Mysteries, I can tell you that technically it's still unsolved. The man that had originally been arrested for the murder has not only been, like, files have been completely dropped and he has been awarded money for wrongful conviction or wrongful incarceration.
So they're not even trying to pursue a case.
Nope.
They're pretty much saying you're not the guy.
He's not the guy.
Yeah.
Not like we had the other one where the guy just took the Alford plea, right? Yeah. A few episodes ago. This is different than that. In fact, that the state is, and the payout is showing that they are taking some sort of responsibility that they got it wrong.
Yeah.
So my homework is, especially we've got a flight in a day and a half. I'm going to download a few episodes of that and try to like listen to them at top speed or kind of power through and see. Just for my personal, I'm
Yeah, you
intrigued
should.
to see how it got from point
You
A
should
to point
listen to
B.
some true crime podcast.
You should listen to some true crime podcast.
Not.
You should listen
Nope.
to Undisclosed with me and we can talk about it.
Nope. Nope.
But I don't know. If for some reason Robbie ever listens to this, please don't take offense that I disagreed with you. But I do love a lot of her work, and I'd be excited to learn more about this. I mean, I will say, you were saying earlier on that there's probably several cases, or like, is there a case out there that I don't know? This is another part of true crime is...
We found it. We found one.
We found one of true crime is wrongful convictions.
Yeah.
Because that's a very interesting, especially now with familiar DNA, a very interesting part of true crime that is evolving very quickly.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because they put it out there like, oh,
Mhm.
update, it's solved.
Yeah.
Well, it's not.
But again, we're watching old episodes of Unsolved Mysteries on Prime Video and looking into this, there was some Unsolved Mysteries before season 1 because it seemed like it beforehand was a
Yes,
What?
I was reading about this.
Yeah.
It was like a special, right?
yeah, like
They
a
would-
TV special every
They would-
once in a
They
while.
would put it out every couple months.
Yeah.
They'd have an episode, and then whoever picked it up as an actual show where they were doing it every week or whatever
Yeah.
it was, and that didn't start till like the fall of 1988,
Yeah.
and like in the winter and that's when they were like showing it as a special every couple months.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
So this one, so I don't know, and I don't know when Amazon Prime took it over or when these updates, because some of them we've watched.
But
It's
clearly,
like,
if the guy wasn't convicted till 2000, they're putting these updates in like 15 years.
yeah, so that's
after.
even why like a lot of the updates, when we see them typically, and I don't know if you just, when I'm watching it, the updates, I mute it and close my eyes because I want to discover it myself. But if I do see the update, I at least know that there's something to research.
Yeah, but like on one of them, they were like, update, he was convicted, did this many, and then died in prison. You know,
Yeah.
like I mean, it was literally like, you know,
Yeah.
not just
So,
an update, but like a complete closure.
but if
to
someone
it.
was to watch this episode just casually, the update is no longer correct.
Yeah, clearly.
And hopefully they got into their podcast search and looked up Unsolved Mysteries and found us. And now they know.
Now you know.
And the more you know, the more you know. What's that from?
I don't know, the better you're off. I don't know.
No. That's from Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
The more you know. Okay, so
We did it.
we did it.
We did
We
it.
recorded on vacation. Ben currently has a hairless cat attacking his foot and a farting dog sitting next to him.
This
So, welcome to our crazy life.
is the worst.
Okay, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to send us an email at unsolvedcouple@gmail.com. Make sure to rate and review us on any podcast platform that you are listening to us. A
Only 5
5-star review
Only 5 stars.
goes a long, long, long way. We are continuing and we'll update as soon as I can on all of these episodes once we get all of our social medias up so that we can communicate and connect with our community. And I think that is all of the jargon that we need to do. You think of
That's it.
anything else?
Nope, that's all we got. That's all she
Okay.
wrote, folks.
All right. We appreciate all of you guys for listening to us, and we are excited to be back next week where Ben and I recap the original gateway drug into true crime.
Unsolved Mysteries.
Bye.